welcome to Wildflower in the Workforce event here with GLSSC, the Genesee, Lapeer, St. Clair, and Shiawassee counties. And we're here today in Lapeer at a pretty cool venue. And I'm happy to introduce the Childcare Coalition. So I'd like to start with that. The representatives of the coalition, we're here today to honor the work that you've done. So if you would stand up and we'll identify your roles. Do we not have, coalition members? Just we want to recognize you. Be recognized. Thank you. So, yes, so we have, the education. We have EDOs here today. We have municipal leaders, business leaders, and that's really what this work has been. We joined later in the process, myself, Ken Roble from Data Driven Decisions. We've been supporting with the implementation phase here, but this group has been meeting for much longer than that, looking into research, synthesizing results, and addressing the complex problems. And that's been one of the big findings of the root cause analysis, which is that there are no simple solutions to complex problems. And we've all seen it in our own way. It's the whack-a-mole scenario that we're familiar with from public funding. It's hard to always see all of the moving pieces at the same time, but this work has been cross-sector by design and brought together many critical sides of the infrastructure and conversation to really help our communities address what people think is not a complex problem, but it really is. The childcare market, as well as the public systems that all together create what we have and rely on. So we have some materials that some of you have seen, visualizations of the public data that's available that the coalition has been working with. You'll each have a handout, a bag with, there's a QR code in there that will have a link to the visualization and the maps to just help you digest the data. It's a starting point for conversations. And it's pretty easy to see things in that are easier to see in a spreadsheet, right? So it's supposed to be a tool. Feel free to reach out to any of us at D3 if you have questions on how to use it. You can actually download the data if you've selected what you want to learn about. You can capture screenshots. Just reach out to us with any questions about that. So we've covered the root cause analysis. It's about the complexity, right? And what are the primary goals that the coalition has identified? Well, number one, like we just described, systemic cross-sector change. And this is about childcare as infrastructure, because when we can really describe it, how it functions in the broader system of our community, we realize how valuable it is, and so do all the stakeholders that might not understand how it actually is their problem. And that's just one of the inroads to work with the different perspectives and stakeholders. So stabilizing and increasing wages. This has been shouted at the tops of people's lungs for a long time, and now it is honored as one of the core reasons of the market failure right now is that the workforce shortages, the providers that are already under capacity, they can't operate at capacity, in many cases because they can't access workforce that is able to afford to take that job, which is a very dire situation. And finally, ensuring that families and parents have the preferences of their own honored through choice that is meaningful about what programs they prefer, and really determining the outcomes that are appropriate for their children with the existing resources. So that was a whole lot, but we're here today to talk about what we can do now that are actionable solutions, that are meaningful and make sense to each of us, so we don't have to wait any longer to start moving towards progress and moving the needle. So that I don't talk anymore, I would like to hand the mic over to Adam Grass here, who is our first speaker from, let's see, Heritage Hollow, LLC. Thank you much.
I appreciate y'all. Thanks. Mike. Sure. Okay. Just click Here. I got a clip now. There we go. Well, I appreciate you guys having me. As he said, my name's Adam Grass. I'm from Heritage Hollow, LLC. I am a child care provider, and what we do is specifically partner with businesses and try to get corporations and businesses, both small and large, into the child care space. That's something that we've had some success doing, and we're seeing more traction. I mean, it's something that we've just started pursuing over the last couple years. We've had a couple big hits with it, and so we're seeing that continue to grow. What we have found so far in doing this is that it dramatically increases several things, but from the child care provider side, it dramatically increases the quality of care that we are able to provide to children. We was able to build out an awesome space, working with a local hospital. It's one of the largest centers in Owasso where we're at. All of our rooms are twice the size of what the licensing requires. I mean, it's a beautiful facility. We've been able to do everything in that regard. We have dietitians that do the menus. So I mean, we're talking registered licensed dietitians who make all the menus exceed all the federal food programmings. We have registered nurses on staff. We have security in the parking lot at all times. I mean, so we've been able to do a lot of things that a lot of child care centers just simply cannot do. And the one piece that's made that possible is partnering with employers. Now, that's a little bit of a challenge, and they've got to feel the pinch before they do it. But just to kind of throw it out there, I mean, we've got that partnership with Memorial. We have some large auto dealerships involved with that. We have some other well-known big hospitals coming involved. We've got a couple other locations coming up because they're starting to see this. And the way we've done this is through what we call as our corporate membership model. I mean, think of the many of IT applications that you can get this day and age that you pay a monthly fee for or annual fee for. We're doing that same thing with childcare. We're going to them and saying, hey, we can give you X amount of guaranteed spots through these age groups, and this is what it'll cost you. They pay an annual fee for it. We guaranteed access to care. They get reduced rates, and they get on board with that. And they do pay those. And it's not cheap, but for a lot of them, they're willing to pay it because it creates a problem. So what it does for the provider side of things, again, is it increases our quality. It increases the wages I'm able to pay our teachers, which we're several dollars an hour above even our local school systems and what we pay our lead teachers. And well, even more above that when we get into our GSRP stuff. We're starting out much higher than what our school systems do. But that's, again, only possible because we're partnering with employers. What it does for the employer, it does a lot for them. It creates a work culture benefit that's unlike anything I've ever seen. Not only does it do it in the workplace for those that are paying memberships to be a part of your program, but it's something that I do in my facility. And so we provide, I don't know if you guys have TriShare up here, but you may have heard of that. I use TriShare. I provide that to my employees. We don't have turnover. Our employees want to stay. They're happy. Their kids are there. And we have a wonderful, wonderful work culture. And that's not just me saying that. That's just something we recently surveyed. There's very little that they would change. And probably the biggest thing they would ask whenever we took a survey from them was, if you can keep me off overtime, definitely do that, which I don't want them on overtime because that's a lot more expensive than straight hours. And so we definitely try to keep them off that. I do not have a problem with staffing. Now, I know that if you're a child care provider here, that may be a problem for you. In all honesty, I was sending people home today. I had too much staff. And there's a reason, again, why we're able to do that is because of the kind of benefits we're providing. We're providing a child care benefit. Their kids are with them on site. We're paying a premium. They come and they stay. They don't go anywhere. Of course, people's life situation change. You have some adjustment there, but that's not just something that's in our facility. That ends up going into the employer. So huge work culture boost for employers that are participating in this stuff. It definitely, it feels like an extension of their workplace. So it helps a ton with the recruitment. That is something that if you're spending dollars on, this will be something that will recruit people very, very quickly. I recently had a conversation with a physician in Munson Health, works in the Munson Healthcare Network out of Kalkaska. They are pulling physicians up there like this, no problem, because they're able to come up there and get child care. They have on-site child care in Kalkaska, and they're pulling physicians up there. We're seeing the same thing in Owasso. We're pulling physicians from Lansing because we have on-site child care. Specifically in the realm where you have two working physicians and they're not using a nanny or something like that, they come into the facility. So recruitment is a huge thing. Whenever you can get employers involved with this, it saves a lot of money on the HR side of things. Retainment, I've already kind of hit. And like I said, the work culture, those are the three big things that I would say make a lasting impact on what you'll see in your workplace environment. Now, with that being said, all of us know it's a lot cheaper to keep employees than it is to constantly have to recruit and retrain. When you have this kind of program, what we're finding is you're not having that much turnover. You're saving money with the training, you're saving money with the recruitment, and you're seeing people stay with you for much longer time. Because for us, it's not just losing a job, and people don't jump ship for $1 or $2 an hour. Why? Because their child care benefit is worth more than that. and they know where they're going, and they know the staff members, and they're a part of their workforce. I mean, when they come in, even though I'm partner and I'm Heritage Hollow, I'm the operating partner. I come in, I got the same badges they got. It looks like I'm right with them. I got the same email address as they got, so they feel like we're just their colleagues, and so it works quite well in that regard. Parents just have a peace of mind bringing their kids on site and close to site, and it has made all the difference in those locations. And for us, again, like I said, we have about 3 or 4 other locations that are in process of going up right now with the same kind of model, partnership with employers that are coming in, doing the corporate membership models, and so we've had a lot of good stuff with us, even to the point where we've already gotten U.S. congressional recognition and U.S. senatorial recognition for some of these programs we're running. So, yeah, you questions? You got a hand up? I don't know if you'll do that now or later. I think that's. It might be a QA.
Already jumping out.
Well, I'll throw just a comment based on what you described. It reminded me of some of our coalition findings when we surveyed businesses, childcare businesses in particular, about their staff turnover and issues, their workforce turnover. One of the findings was, in the staff in particular that said they're looking for work or they left a job. 9 out of 10 of the staff said, well, I wouldn't have done it if I could get the same $1 more or $2 more from, a new service job where they've upped prices for service labor, $15, $17 an hour. They would leave for the $2, but if they could get comparable pricing at the same job, they would go right back.
Yeah. Saying that, and you tapped on something I meant to mention that I forgot, so I'm glad you said that because that triggered something for me. One of the things that you're also going to see is the development of talent. There is a lot of talent sitting on the sidelines right now that we don't even see and don't even recognize is sitting there. How do I know that? Because about 30% of my staff right now are mothers who left the workforce who could not come back to work because they did not have child care, but they can bring them to where I'm at and then they come back to work. And so there is talent sitting on the sidelines, and it is not being utilized. Child care brings it off the sideline, and you're going to see a greater talent pool that you can pull from. And then tapping into that, that's also why we've done what we've done when we partner with employers. I mean, like we start our lead teachers, they come in, $18 an hour right out of the gate. GSRP, we start them out like $23 an hour. And so we're moving them right along in that regard. And so that's what we're able to do whenever you have that. And I'll be the first to tell you, I'll pay them more. If I can figure out ways to keep getting the revenue up, I will pay them more, just because to me it is worth it. I don't want to spend my time. I'd rather spend my time doing this than recruiting and training staff. And so that's the choice that's laid before me. So, and I choose to do this. So, so. Any other thing I can comment before they get to the Q&A that maybe you might trigger my brain on? I might have forgot. Anything outstanding? All right, I'll let you have it.
Well, that reminds me of the report literally titled Untapped Potential about Michigan ranking 39th in the country for workforce participation. And you were describing exactly some of the core reasons, right? In healthcare industries in particular, which I believe was one of your immediate strong clients, Memorial Health you mentioned. Yep. We've been speaking with McLaren across the state actually about their interest and urgency to fill roles and get a benefit package like this, just addressing their workforce issues simply to ensure they have the right staff available, because within healthcare and caregiving industries, childcare included, but healthcare, elder care, they are predominantly 80% or more women in the workforce. And who is getting pulled out of the workforce when there are childcare problems? The data also suggests 4 out of 5 times it's women. So that's compounded in certain industries. And healthcare has a lot of money and liability on stakes on the table. So they're very eager to work with businesses like yourself that are ready to innovate and help build opportunities through networks, really. This is the business-to-business negotiations that can really solve a lot of the complex problems. And it's kind of a new area of business partnerships that haven't really been done in the past like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll even further comment on that. You're absolutely right. Businesses do want to solve this problem. It's just, again, they have to see the value in it. And that is hard to get them to see, because when you're asking them to come off sizable checks, especially whenever most of the executives, their jobs is dependent upon those bottom dollars, they have got to be able to be certain that they're going to get bang for the buck. And just to kind of throw it out there too, you're absolutely right. Healthcare industry is the ones that we're seeing the most traction from. We have some very beginning partnerships beginning to start with U of M and Sparrow. Some locations with them, St. John's, or we're in the process of putting a facility on Michigan Avenue, downtown Lansing, as well as Ionia. And so those are they do have the interest in it, but they've got to be able to see it, and they got to be able to see that you're going to be able to pull it off. And they're willing to throw money at it, but they're hesitant, and it takes them a while to do it. But whenever they see it happen, and you got to get creative too with how you do it with them too. So like Memorial, I was already running like a wellness center, childcare drop-in with them. So that was one of the things we were doing. It's like a health, wellness, massage, pampering type thing where kids come in, the parents come in to exercise or get a massage, they can drop their kids off for a couple hours while mom and dad go exercise or whatever. And so as we begin to get into that, I said, hey, your employees have this huge need for this, and you actually have this massive building right down the road that you're not really using, and so we was able to kick those conversations off that way. So get creative. We have to get creative in the way we engage them. IT companies are one, but since COVID, a lot of IT companies, the office spaces are empty. I've recently just had a pretty large IT company come to me and said the same thing. Hey, we're having a problem getting people back in the office. We need some of them back in the office. We have this massive amount of space that we are not using. Would you consider coming into this space and doing some kind of on-site childcare? So that will help incentivize getting folks that are working remotely back into the facility. So those are ways that does happen, but you're absolutely right. It is a huge problem, and I'll kind of to validate what you're saying too in regards to people not going back to work. My wife's an RN. She ain't worked in 12 years. You know why? Because she stayed home with my kids, and she, and so it's not that she can't get a job and couldn't get a very well-paying job, but it just didn't make sense with the access to care and what I'm already doing. It just doesn't. She just stays home with the kids, and so now they're old enough that child care is not so much of a problem for me. But that's where these wheels begin to turn. It's like, wait a minute here, this is a problem. So yeah, it can be done, but getting businesses involved with it, I think, are key to seeing some of it turned around. I'd
like to say that's really one of the big innovations that your team is bringing to this field. Even the ecosystem in Michigan is negotiating business-to-business opportunities for a collective group while ensuring that the stakeholders receive good value on every end. And that's a newer model in Michigan. To just be organically succeeding. So I think that's a wonderful thing to really sets the stage for why we're here. Right, we're talking about innovations, opportunities that we immediately have that meet everyone's needs, but it takes cross-sector work like this to get the right people having the right conversation at the right time.
Yeah, and what we've done in that regard too is we've tried to design something that's not just going to hit the big business, right? I mean, this is a problem for the fast food worker. This is a problem for the hospital worker or the factory, all down the line. And so what we've tried to do is create different, going back into that membership model, what we've done there is create different levels of membership, different levels of access, so that whether you are a $1 billion a year company or you're just a small business that employs 5 people, there's access to that to where you can get some guaranteed access to care and get your employees some discounts and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not going to tell you any of this stuff is inexpensive, because it's just not. I mean, childcare is just, and I can't figure out how to solve that piece of the puzzle. There's just, it's difficult to do, but we have figured out some pieces to bring some of the costs down and bring some of the wages up for the workers, so you have consistent care. You know who your kids are going to be with and who they're probably going to be with over the next 3 to 5 years. And so those are the problems we immediately set out to solve. Now, if we can figure out the piece of bringing down the total cost, I'll be impressed.
And in many cases, that's scale, right?
Yeah.
So a part of the membership model, the reason why it works is because by defining that model, you can get enough scale right off the bat to get it rolling, and it's got some inertia. But bigger than that, we've got other opportunities. I think I'd like to pose a question for any leaders from business here that might deal with benefits questions. Just if you manage employees and compensation packages and have to consider this, what speaks to you? Things like backup care or stipends, leveraging lifestyle benefits. Are there any leaders here that would like to just throw out there what their perspectives are about such benefits? No problem. Well, I'm going to let an expert take the stage then to describe some opportunities, if everyone's happy with that.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Adam. Is it on?
Use this.
Yeah. I see a red light. That's usually not good. All right. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? It's a little warm. It's a little buggy. I am Kathy Zenda-Wilson. Together with Maria Ortiz-Borden, we make up the Pulse team. We are located in Southwest Michigan, but we're working all over the state and trying to address this childcare crisis. And so we're really pleased to be here with you today to talk about how we all play a role in solving, as Ken put it, a very wicked problem. It's going to take all of us, right? And so the question, or the answer to Adam saying, I haven't been able to figure it out yet, is that, you know, childcare is infrastructure. It's going to require public investment. We don't have that yet. So we've got to figure out what we need to do as we're traveling that road trying to get there. And there's a lot of things we can do. That's the good news. Will it solve everything? No, but we can try with innovations like what Adam was talking about to really address this issue on many, many fronts. So I'm going to have everyone close their eyes for a minute. I can't tell those of you who have sunglasses on if your eyes are closed, so I'll trust that they are. So I want you to imagine that every one of your employees, because I'm going to assume that many of you are in that position, have the childcare they need to show up for work every day and be productive and engaged. Okay, can you picture it? There's no barriers there. What's different for you at work? Anybody? Productivity, right? People are there, they can actually do the work. Anything else?
They're arriving with less stress and baggage.
They have less stress and baggage. What happens when employees are stressed?
Less happy.
They're less happy. What happens when they're less happy?
It affects the kids.
It affects the kids, and who else does it affect?
Me.
Yeah. And it affects your bottom line as a business owner, right? They're probably not going to be as productive. What we know about brain science is that if our needs aren't met, our ability to really be rational and really functioning at our top of our game is really restricted. We just can't go there. We can't do both things at the same time. And when parents are worried about their kids, that's going to affect the way they show up. Anybody here play the, how many people here have children? So a lot of us, the majority. How many people have played the my job is more important than your job if you have a partner thing in the morning, right? I did. Like, my kids are old now. They're 25 and 30. But I remember back when my kids were young, middle of the night, one of them gets sick, something happens. My husband was a high school teacher. His excuse was that he could never get a sub. I said, I have 18 meetings I have to go to. And we played the whole game of who's going to have to stay at home. And it was always a struggle, right? Always. And that hasn't gone away. So there are things that we need to be thinking about. When either of us showed up at work, whoever won or lost that straw, I'm not sure which one is the winner and which one's the loser, that added stress to our lives. There was work that didn't get done. There were things that we had to take care of. So this idea of childcare as everybody's problem, it's not just those with children. It's all of us. It's the coworkers of those who can't be there fully present because they're worried about their kids, right? It's a $13 billion problem in Michigan alone in lost productivity due to the lack of childcare. This is something that's big, right? So Moms First is a group that if you don't follow them and you're interested in this childcare specifically, you might want to follow them on the socials and just the work that they do in general. They've partnered with the Boston Consulting Group and they've done a lot of data. They've got 5 main huge employers that they're working with that have allowed them access to the impact of them investing in childcare. And what they have found is that there's up to a 425% return on investment for investing in childcare for their employees. They have found that they have a more productive, a more happy, somebody mentioned the word happy, they're folks that are staying, right? So retention is key. And they project that it costs 2 times the amount of somebody's salary to replace them. So they suggest that, what was the 1%? Let me get this specifically down for you so this data point is not garbled up. It concluded that retaining just 1% of eligible employees can cover the cost of the benefits that they purchase. So the benefits pay for themselves. We've already vetted this out. This is something employers can and should do. It's just typically employers, what we have found is that employers don't know what to do. They're not exactly sure how to travel that road. Where is their equity with their other employees? Is that going to be an issue? Ken mentioned lifestyle benefits. That's what some employers will call it, so that it's not specific around childcare, but there are other things you could do. So Pulse started engaging employers several years ago in trying to figure out what niche they had when it came to addressing the childcare crisis. And this was specific at the time to Southwest Michigan. And what we were told by the employers we were working with was, I get it, I want to be a part of the solution, I just really don't know how. So we created the Pulse Employer Roadmap, which is what you've got the booklet for in your bags as a little takeaway. That website was built with employers in mind. The idea here was, you don't know what to do, we'll help you. Here's a roadmap for what you need to do. But that roadmap is only valuable if you first understand what your employees are experiencing, right? So there are a lot of employers we've worked with who have a lot of assumptions, and a lot of C-suite folks, the executives who are so, let's be honest, pretty far removed from their frontline staff, make a lot of assumptions about what their experiences are, but they really don't know because they haven't asked. Many don't ask because they fear that if they ask, then people are going to assume they're going to do something about it, and they don't want to get caught in something that they're not willing to do. But what we have found over the course of the last several years is that is a really unwarranted concern. People can read through that. They understand that you want to know what they're experiencing, and it actually goes a long way at building the will of your employees and their morale to know that you care enough to ask. So when you go to the Pulse Roadmap website, there are actually customizable surveys in there you can use to ask questions of your workforce about their experiences specific to childcare. That data then can help you inform what on that roadmap is the best solution for you. So I'll give you a few examples. We have a large manufacturer in Battle Creek that's an international company, and they have a plant in Battle Creek. When they surveyed their employees, they didn't get a super direct response as to what the answer was. They had some assumptions, but they said, you know what, I think we need more data. So they set up a call-in system that when you call in as an employee and you say, I can't make it to work today, they ask if it's childcare related. If it's childcare related, you are redirected to a different person whose sole job it is to get more information. Like, did your childcare provider get sick? Did your kid get sick? Did your childcare business close? Because a lot of people use informal care. Was grandma out of town and on vacation? Like, what specifically led to this loss of work, so that we then can look at that data and say, you know what we need? We need backup care for sick kids. Or we need something for when people's childcare providers are on vacation. Or we need a relationship with a childcare business locally who can offer just the services that we need. So it is really about using that data from those surveys to really understand what the need is. We have an aviation company in Battle Creek that used the data to create a lifestyle benefit package that people can use to either purchase childcare. It's not enough to cover all the costs, but it actually helps subsidize it. They can use it for elder care if they have aging parents. They can use it also to buy extra time off. And what they found is that a lot of people took the extra time off because they said, then at least I'm not worried. If my kid gets sick, I can actually be home with them so that I can help them heal, I can help them get better. And who doesn't want their parent when they're sick? They don't want to go somewhere. They'd like to stay home.
Extra parent choice, I would just add.
For sure. With all of these options, what we prioritize when we're working with employers is that you want to make sure you don't take away choice. A lot of folks, and we've had several employers approach us and say, I think we need on-site care. Okay, tell me how much of the check needs to be, and you go find me a building, and we're going to do this. And we said, well, let's hold your horses a bit. Let's think about this a little bit more, and with a little more depth, right? So let's say a 30-slot center solve all of your childcare needs for your entire workforce? No, so then how do you choose who gets to go there and who doesn't? How will you subsidize it? Because there are on-site places that subsidize it heavily. It's not something that is, as you referenced, it's not cheap. And it's not cheap not paying people very high wages, right? It's an expensive business to run. So we said, instead of leaping to the Taj Mahal of childcare, because sometimes it works. There are examples where it's great. CalSec, has anybody here ever heard of CalSec? It's a spice company in Kalamazoo. I didn't even know a spice company was a thing till I met with CalSec, to be honest with you. But they are a family-owned company, and one of their family board members couldn't go to board meetings because she couldn't find childcare. So she went to the CEO of the company, who was no longer a family member, and said, if I'm experiencing this and I have all the resources in the world, what are our staff experiencing, right? And they attract scientists from all over the world. So people coming to little old Kalamazoo from everywhere, they thought, we've got, what they do have is lots of land. So they are on this place that I drove by it probably 100 times before I knew what it was. I thought it was a farm or a golf course or a horse stable. I didn't know what it was. It was a big giant white building. But they had, like, one of their original spaces on the site was an old house that they converted into what they call the farmhouse, and that's their childcare center, that they actually don't call a childcare center. They say that they are developing future scientists, right? They hired the best people in Kalamazoo that they knew to run it, and they made sure that those people eventually were CalSec employees who had benefits. They did not want there to be an unequal experience for them. Now, you talk to the employees, they are ecstatic about it. They can watch their kids playing outside. There's just a huge benefit. But it is limited in the number of children it can serve, so people still have to be able to go elsewhere, right? But they have found that it has paid for itself. But every year, they have to subsidize it. It is not a thing that pays for itself. So it's a pretty hefty ticket, but they know that they don't turn people over. The retention itself, right, is going to pay for that. Now, there are other things, examples of what this could look like. One of our other employers in Battle Creek has partnered with a childcare business, and did Duncan take at least a year kind of vetting different childcare businesses? Like, went around and said, we want one whose values match ours. We want a childcare business where we'd feel comfortable taking our own kids. So they did site visits, they did interviews, and they landed on this particular center. And instead of saying, we want to buy slots, they said, you know what? We want to be on your wait list. We want 2 spots on your wait list, because what they found is that people were putting off pregnancy, or they were really worried when they got pregnant that they weren't already on a list, and infant care is the most expensive and hardest to find. So they have 2 slots. They're like number 24 and 25 on the wait list for this particular business. When they get up to 1 and 2, if they don't have an employee who's ready, that's when it will cost Duncan. Right now it's costing them nothing. It's just an agreement that they have. So they got very creative with their solution, right? But that they can put that in their HR, toolbox. And when they're approached by an employee who announces that they're pregnant, they say, what are you going to consider for care? And here's something you could do. They also did a lunch and learn. They brought some child care development experts in to answer families' questions about what they didn't know about parenting, because guess what? Those children do not come with manuals. None of us know it automatically. And so being able to support their employees that way really does show that they care across the board for their people, right? And it's been a huge boon in their culture audits, right? Like, are people staying? Yes, they are. Is this a reason? Now, there's going to be correlation versus causation. There's a lot of other stuff that goes on there, but they do know that it's the right thing to do. In addition, so there are the things you could do for your employees specifically, and that's important. How many of you here are employers? So we've got lots of hands, right? Those are things you could do for your workforce specifically. But being here, you realize now that this is a bigger issue than just what is facing your employees. And so the idea of belonging to a coalition, like the one that was interviewed or introduced here earlier, and being a part of the bigger ecosystem building efforts that are going on around childcare is also critically important. So there are seats that you sit at, tables you're invited to, that people who are working on childcare don't have access to. So you having the talking points you need to be an advocate for public investment, for public-private partnerships, for really talking about what it's going to take to move the needle on this is critically important. So it's not just about, I'm here only going to look out for my own folks. If you build the supply in your community, if you contribute to that work, it will help everyone, right? So there are, the city of Kalamazoo, who I know I've mentioned a few times now, they were looking at the tri-share model. How many people here know what tri-share is? So there's a few people, but for those of you who don't, it's a cost-sharing model of childcare, where the state pays a third, the employer pays a third, and the family pays a third. And it's a great model. It is income eligible only, right? So people have to make a certain amount of money. So there are a lot of employers, like the one we mentioned, the aviation company, none of their staff qualified. So that was a thing, that's a great thing. None of their staff make too little, so they don't qualify for it. That's good to have. But for those who do, it can be a real benefit, and you're leveraging the dollars the state has for childcare through that third, which is through the childcare subsidy program, which is now called scholarships. Well, the city of Kalamazoo was looking at that, and they're like, you know, this is a great model, but we have a lot of people in our poorest neighborhoods who don't have employers who will actually qualify or participate in that program. And we have a lot of people in those neighborhoods who are looking for work and need childcare while they look for work. What if we took on the role of employer so that the third we pay is going to cover that third, and they don't have to have an employer who participates? They took a very targeted neighborhood, it's just the eastern neighborhood in Kalamazoo, and they got private dollars to subsidize that. They can't use their general fund dollars. They had to do something that was going to be a little creative, but they had a local funder who said, sign me up. They only have room for 12 folks, I think, initially, because they want to test it out. But that's a way to get really innovative with what's possible, right? With a municipality stepping up and saying, we have a role, we got to figure out what it is, here's one way we can do it. And so that's really promising, right? So we're writing a case study up about that right now so that other municipalities, if they're so inspired, can try and figure out how they do that in their communities. So we are only limited right now by our imagination. We have a governor who's very interested in children getting a really good start, and we need to capitalize on that. We need to ensure that our local elected officials understand the importance of it. I'm a former city commissioner in Battle Creek, and I can tell you that in 2020, when I proposed to my fellow commissioners that we prioritize childcare businesses when we're talking about business development, I got practically laughed out of the room. And even the city attorney was like, we don't do childcare. And I'm looking at everybody in the room like, I never suggested you do childcare. I'm like, they are businesses. They require the same kind of support as other businesses in getting started. I just want the same to be afforded to them, but I'd like them explicitly named because otherwise it won't happen, right? So the next meeting happens after I introduce it, and we talk about it again. And I said, I'm going to ask our small business development officer, like, have you started any restaurants helped any restaurants get started in Battle Creek? They said, of course we have. I said, all right, did you consider yourself a cook? And everybody got it, right? Like, oh, okay. We get those businesses started. They are businesses. But think about it, and that goes very deep. We have a lot of bias around care and who provides it. We have a lot that is deeply, deeply in our bones as a country, as a society, around whose job it is to care for children. And until those mindsets change, we're not going to change things. So we have to simultaneously be talking about these things as businesses. They're not babysitters. Even the word provider is a little, it's just call them business owners, call them early childhood professionals, because these are people who are doing critical brain building work. What we know about those first 5 years is that if you get it done well at that time, everything else is so much easier, because we're going to pay for it before they're 5, or we're going to pay for it down the road, right? We're going to understand that if they don't have that strong beginning, there's going to be extra costs in education. There's going to be extra costs in lack of productivity when they don't enter the workforce. We know that this is a way that works. So we want to make sure that we're investing everything we can there, and employers do have a role. So when you visit thepulseroadmap.org, you will find there all the different opportunities you have as an employer. I suggest, again, not even suggest, strongly mandate that you do a survey to understand really well what the needs of your employees are. If you need help analyzing that data, our contact information is on the website. We will help you with that. This is something that we see a ton of value in, and we know that you all play a key role, regardless of what size you employ. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have 300 employees or 3,000. You can have 10 employees and do something. I just met a woman. I was in DC a couple weeks ago for a couple childcare related summits, and I met a woman from Iowa who runs the Iowa Women's Foundation. She has started a very innovative partnership with employers that has led to the development of what they call the Childcare Solution Fund. And what they do is employers sign up to be a part of it. They contribute, on average, $150 per employee per year for 3 years. That money goes into a pooled fund. Each region in Iowa will define who gets to be on that selection committee of how that money is spent. But like for one region, they decided they needed to increase all the wages of their childcare professionals. If they didn't do that, they would just keep churning through people, right? So like, let's stabilize this workforce and figure out how we do that. All their money went to wages that they raised in that area. But what it did is it opened the door for employers of every size. So they have mom and pop shops with 2 and 3 employees who buy in $300, $450 a year. It's not going to break the bank, but it's going to feel like they're part of the solution and they can actually participate.
It's good old-fashioned barn racing, but with public infrastructure.
Exactly. And so we're looking in Michigan at trying to get something like that ramped up. Like, is that something that we could create the ecosystem for here in Michigan? I think there's an appetite for it. So she equates it to this. She has 3 kids. This woman, her name is Sherry Petty. She's incredibly smart and a great speaker. And she said, my 3 kids are still in school. The beginning of the school year, I go into the principal. I say, can I just write you a check and don't ask me for any fundraising? I just can't. I would just want to give you the money. We have found that a lot of employers are similarly situated. They don't have the desire or the drive to go through the process of actually doing all the work it's going to take to meet the needs of their actual workforce, but they will contribute to something bigger than them. And there's huge benefit. Their name gets on a list that gets to show that they're a part of it and everything else. So there's some benefit there that we can really capitalize on.
To a certain extent, why should they reinvent the wheel, right? If they can hear a value proposition that makes sense,
yep,
they will join in.
For sure. So we want to find different, like Maria and I often talk about like this work being a highway. You get on where you get on, right? Like, if you don't have to start at the beginning, but if there's a place for you, just kind of wedge yourself in there and we'll figure out where you go from there. But we're hopeful. There's a lot we can all do. There is a lot, especially employers can do to at least understand the issues so that they can move into a place of empowered action. And we want to be able to provide the technical assistance you need to actually do that well. And we want to be able to write some case studies. Our first one was just published today, and you'll find it on the Pulse Roadmap website. And it was on the work that Duncan Aviation is doing. So we want to make sure we're lifting up those employers who are doing this in a way that inspires other employers. Andy Richards, the COO of Duncan Aviation in Battle Creek, actually went with me to Lansing in February, and we testified in front of a dual committee of the LEO appropriations, so the Labor Economic Opportunity and the Workforce Board, and told them that this is a workforce issue. The document you have on the table that was distributed says very clearly, teachers can't afford to stay, families can't afford to pay. This is a really challenging crisis that we're facing that is going to require a lot of our elected officials to really internalize and understand that so that they can move to take action. All right, so I talked a lot. I would love to hear any questions you have, any ideas that you guys are working on that you'd want to vet through. Is everybody just hot and tired and ready to go home? Yes, please.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I know we're talking about employers, HR, what they can do.
Yep.
Has there been any research in regards to things such as management? Because some HRs will say it's up to manager's discretion. You may have one manager that says, you're fine, take the day, you're with your child.
Yeah.
You may have another manager that you switch over to and they're like, absolutely not, you cannot do this. So sometimes it might not be the policies that need to change within the HR.
It's the practice.
So it might just be how training of said managers or whoever makes those calls would be.
Yeah, so that's a really fascinating question. Thank you for asking that, because it's one thing to have like your C-suite folks say this is what we're about and what we're doing. It's another to look on the ground and make sure it's actually happening. So there's a couple of responses I have. First is like when you read the Duncan case study, they created a culture where their managers know like flexible scheduling is going to be a priority of ours. So you'll read in the case study the example of an employer or an employee. Both the husband and wife work at Duncan. They have a daughter who's now going to school, and they thought, okay, good, finally some relief. Somebody had to be there when she got off the bus because they couldn't find after school care. And so they were both freaking out, like which one of us is going to have to leave our job to do this? And this man in particular went to his boss and said, hey, Ashley's getting off the bus at 3:30 and I don't get home until 4. And he said, move your hours. So he goes into work a half an hour early, leaves a half an hour early. Problem solved. So they are really encouraging their managers to take that on. I'm suggesting though that for a lot of employers, that requires a lot of really strong feedback loops, because you can say one thing, but if it's not in practice, like how are you asking to make sure that it actually happens? So there's some information out there, but you're going to have some hardline managers who are like, no, you're paid for a job. These are the hours you're supposed to be here. Sorry. We have an employer in Battle Creek who will remain unnamed because I'm not going to say very pleasant things about them, but they wonder about the churning they have around employees. And when you talk to anybody who's worked there, they're miserable. They're treated like cogs, right? It's like, well, you're going to go anyway, so we're going to get somebody else in. And I'm just really curious about their numbers of what it costs them to just keep going through people, right? They go on a point system. And you'll talk to people on the street and they're like, yeah, I don't go to that employer because I know I'm 2 strep throat cases away from losing my job. That's how they talk about them, right? They're not going to get people to come and stay unless they really address the root causes of this and actually create a culture where people know, because people have kids, people have families, right? There was a stat in here too that said 1 in 3 employees balance parenthood and work. So this is not a small number. It's a pretty significant number, right? There's a lot of us. So thank you for the question.
It might be a hidden problem for employers that have remote workers now.
Yes.
And families are solving their own problems still.
Yep.
And that could be a complexity that employers are dealing with because it's an unresolved need.
Yeah.
People solve their own issues.
Well, and it's also, I do want to give a warning or a caveat about the survey. We have a really large employer in Battle Creek who finally agreed to do the survey, and they did it through their HR department. And they found in their survey, because they analyzed it themselves, that they don't have a problem with childcare.
Analyze their own results.
And HR asked.
I know what surveys are like. I like to keep my job.
Exactly. So who does the survey matters, right? So in Battle Creek, that's where we lifted up our economic development organization. So our employers who agreed to do the survey initially, because as we were testing all of our tools out, BCU, which is our local, Battle Creek Unlimited, our local economic development organization, offered to do the survey on behalf of them and said, as a community, we're trying to understand childcare needs. Would you please tell us what your experiences are? And they were able to disaggregate it by company, by location, by type of sector, all those things. So just another caveat. But yes, people are not honest with HR, especially if it's a punitive environment, right? Yeah.
Well, even talking about that with surveys and things like that, it makes me wonder, when taking the survey, like my husband has no clue. I can tell, and like, he has nothing to do with childcare or anything like that. I love the man, but he's clueless when it comes to things like that. So if
he was responding,
were to come to him and say, "Do you have childcare issues?" He'd go, "No."
It's like, no, I
Yeah.
heard it.
Yeah, exactly. But you turn around and you ask me and be like, "I need all of this." So
Yeah.
He's like, "What do you mean you need all
Yeah.
of these things?" So it makes me wonder, when surveying or talking to other people, what type of representation are they actually having?
Well, thank you for that, because I wonder if we could add to the front of it. Respond to this survey with your spouse or partner, if you have one, right? That could be a very different approach, because I could tell you, I walked into a room with a group of CEOs, and the one gentleman, typically men, said, we don't have an issue with childcare because we only hire men.
Oh,
So my response, when I could manage my face, was, so men don't have children. I don't understand, like back to the bias, right? Like it's a woman's responsibility, even if both parents are working, to address the issue. And so that is something we have to work with. That is just the culture, the climate. Until we can change that, we're going to have to be thinking very strategically about how we get the information, who we're engaging. The other thing that was almost laughable, and we were able to help them understand it, that's one reason the handout on the table was created, is because we had there were 3 CEOs at a table who said, do we just need to have these childcare business owners in so we can help them run a business better? Because they really didn't understand the complexities of childcare. They didn't understand the small margins they're operating within. They didn't understand the costs. And so they just thought it was bad management. These are people that are just babysitters and they're trying to run a business. So we had to really change their mindset around that. And we were able to very carefully with data, right? Like that's what you do. You don't come in with anecdotes, you come in with data. It's like, well, did you know that most childcare businesses operate on such a thin margin that many childcare directors aren't even paying themselves what they're worth or should do? And do you know that childcare directors or business owners are actually doing everything. They are responsible for everything. Do we have any childcare business owners in here? Okay, how many hats do you think you wear? All of it, right? There's not even a number high enough to tell you what it is, right? If you got to be out there shoveling the snow, you're managing staff crisis, you're managing the families. If you're a nonprofit, you have a board you're working with.
You have your spouse that you don't pay.
Everybody does childcare in the family when you're a childcare business, right? You just visited Kim Spivey last week, right? She's been doing childcare for how long in Battle Creek?
But she's got her daughter doing it, her husband
her
does
mother.
it, her mother does it.
Yeah, everybody. You are not immune if you're in Kim Spivey's house. You got a role doing something. So this is something that is, some people take on very seriously, and when they do it really well, it's worth lots of money. They just don't get it. The other challenge that we have is, we don't have enough supply. Some of it is because of the margins and people don't make any money, and it's a lot of work. It's hard, right? But it's also that we have overregulation and we have under-resource problems, right? And those two things combined are just toxic. There is a woman that we've been connected with in Connecticut who owns a childcare business. She's actually building housing for her employees. She figured it will pay for itself in 10 years because she keeps turning over staff, and she can't pay them more, but she could get investments to purchase real estate. And that she's working with these grad students who are architect students, and they're redoing these houses and then turning them over to the employees. And they don't pay anything to live there as long as they're employees of this childcare center.
Amazing, but once again, why are we having to go these routes from other...
Exactly. What's that?
Waiting for filling.
I know. Well, we're waiting for some savior, right? And with the answers, we just got to get creative right now, right? And so what she said, the first thing she said to me when I got on a Zoom call with her was, childcare grows in a hostile environment. Everything is against us, right? And so when we're doing it well, you better give us a whole lot of props because we're doing it with really bad soil, right?
Learn from that example, right? That's a good case study.
For sure. Yeah, we're trying to get to Connecticut, hopefully this fall. I meant to tell you that today. It was a group that wants to go. Yes.
Well, I'm wondering how many opportunities we have in the state of Michigan to create some kind of complex or a facility, similar to Suncrest here in Lapeer, but we dive deeper than that, where you have multi-generational.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Then you could have volunteers.
Yeah.
Volunteer grandmas and grandpas that would kind of offset. There wouldn't necessarily be any ratio, but they certainly would be the extra guys needed in the classroom.
Yeah, so there's a lot of interest in that. So I know I'm mic'd, so I'll just repeat that so that it makes it on there. Is this idea of intergenerational approaches to childcare, and also about space sharing, right? So if there is a space that has extra room, like the work you're doing, like you're identifying partners and saying, you have the space to do this, let me do it for you. You don't have to be the expert, you just need to provide the space. So we need people to step up and start partnering in that way. And there is a group in Marshall, Michigan who's interested in that. So we've just started exploring it because they have an aging population in Marshall. People are not moving there, except now we've got the Ford plant coming, right? So there's going to be this influx of young families that are going to need care. It's a childcare desert right now, so we're going to have to get really creative. It's in those spaces where you get people together that you need to put everything on the table and say, here are what some of the options are. What would it look like? Because you don't know who will bite. Because you could get that champion who's going to actually push that. So
this is even an opportunity for local communities or regional economic
developers
literally support possible estate planning opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's never enough money to be like, well, let's talk to the
Yep.
planner, and so you just don't even have the conversation, let alone the supports to hand off what could be a functional business and in any other industry would be sold as an asset.
Yep. No. Yep. You're right. Yep.
Which is actually a huge inefficiency, just like a staff turnover.
Yep. I'm thinking about the Valentine Center in Battle Creek. We have a center across the street from the hospital that closed when the director/owner died suddenly. No succession plan in place. So they had to shutter it. 45 families had to find new care overnight. And thank God we have strong partnerships in our community. Every one of those families was placed. That was on a Thursday. They were placed by Monday. How that happened was like a miracle, right? But you're right. Like and these people are working themselves into the ground. Bobby died prematurely. I mean, that was...
Venture capital is swooping in right now.
They are.
The feds have been guaranteeing more and more funding, and the state is tripling down on investments And there is a real venture capital situation where people who have worked their lives serving communities, building a business, are being bought out at fire sale prices to support large VC interests. And
Yep.
that's a reality happening across
Yep.
Michigan.
Yeah, and across the country, right? So there's some things being written about that right now. Is that just like with elder care, you're seeing it happen there with nursing homes, where these folks with lots of money are going and buying up lots of them, and then the care gets abysmal because they're not paying their staff. The same thing could happen in childcare if we're not careful. So those of us who are doing regional plans have made recommendations to the state. We have a section in our plan specifically around that, suggesting regulations that the state needs to consider to keep that from happening.
That ends up being value extraction.
Yeah.
For example, California-based companies or investment companies.
Yeah, they don't care.
Shell portfolios where they purchase acquisitions.
Yep.
And it just gets rolled into other
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
reality. But
Other-
opportunities at the same time.
For sure.
VC is here, and I'd call it vulture capital. But VC is here because they see opportunity.
Yep.
And that's because there's actually opportunity for everyone to invest in it, but they're best positioned. So this is when we can really support the stakeholders that we know we're intending to serve and actually do our best to not let it be a fire sale for VC.
Well, and one last last Michigan-based example, and then we'll open it up for questions and kind of conclude tonight, is that in Battle Creek, we assessed the experience our early childhood professionals were having financially. Like, what are your top 5 expenses? What are your biggest challenges? And it's no surprise that rent is the biggest expense, right? And that the majority of our childcare professionals are renters. They have not been able to get positioned yet to buy homes. There's a big challenge with that. And so we approached the city through their ARPA allocation and the Kellogg Foundation, which we're lucky enough to have in our backyard. And so we would like to pilot a program where we provide $500 rental stipend to childcare business or childcare professionals who commit to staying in the field for 3 years. So they get 1 year of rental assistance at $500 a month, and they agree to be in the field for 3 years. We know it's a big commitment. On paper, they're supposed to pay it back if they leave, but we really don't. I mean, there's no expectation that's quick. And we're even able to negotiate that, because if they're leaving for something that makes a lot of sense for their family, we don't want to penalize them, right? We don't want them behind, because that would be kind of defeat the purpose. But we've been doing a lot of data gathering from these folks that are in the program, and what we're hearing is that the majority of them, well, a good portion of them, are using the dollars that they're saving on rent to pay off medical debt because they don't have medical benefits. So we're paying attention to these themes, right? And saying, okay, well, if we could help people get into the marketplace or get benefits in some way, could we help address this? There is a national group called RIP Medical Debt. Has anybody heard of them? They come into communities and they work with municipalities and they say, we have data, we can mine the data from our creditors to tell you where the biggest challenges are with medical debt in your community, and then they hyper focus on a particular area. It's a zip code typically, and they will wipe out every person's medical debt in that zip code. Now, it requires a significant infusion of private dollars, so this is not an easy fix, but it is something somebody created, and they said, you know what? This is something that's drowning people, and we've got to address it. So I called the people who run RIP Medical Debt, and I said, all right, I have a special population I'd love to explore this with. We have childcare business or professionals. Most of them are not covered by any medical coverage, and they're drowning in debt. And they've never done anything for a special population. It's only been zip code based. So I continue to work with them to see if we could be the first. Like, let us test it out here in Battle Creek. We've got all the data about who those folks are because we've got a registry. Like, if you are licensed to do childcare, we know who you are. So we have to get creative and really so problems like this, these wicked problems are like onions. You peel it and there's another one. You peel it and there's another one. So you have to just take it a layer at a time and try and find solutions each time you come up against something and try and move that system appropriately.
I'd like to just add to
Yeah.
your pilot suggestion there about working with basically an operational home stipend for, in most cases, likely a family home.
Right?
Realizing is one of the primary themes we'll hear from family homes in particular, is they entered the field because their kids needed care.
Right.
Because they might have been caring for their neighbor's kids or the friend or their sibling down the street at the same time, and it made a profit. It made sense to I'm
Right.
already going to care for my kids.
Might as well care for a few
my
more.
friends, or maybe I'm already caring like pro bono for free or for bartering, as people
Right.
do when you're surviving. And this opportunity is effectively incentivizing people who are already doing that. That is the unmet potential, right? The
Yeah.
people pulled out of the workforce to meet their own needs from a lack of infrastructure.
Yep.
And here, this is just saying, you're already doing it. One incentive to start your business and take advantage of all the tax benefits of running a home office and writing it all off.
And this is not just an economic issue. I said I was going to end and I didn't. But anyway, you'll get to know me. Maria's used to this. But there is also the social benefit to us addressing this, right? There is a Nobel Prize winner who's a scientist who says very emphatically that without childcare, she would not have been able to solve a particular disease. It would have taken her out of the workforce and she would not have been able to advance her research. So this is not just a matter of people not being able to contribute to our economy. This is a matter of people not being able to contribute to the better good of our society. So we have to think about it also in a much broader context, right? This is not just so people can show up and be an EMT, very important work, but this is also people who are solving really intractable problems and trying to heal people. And we want to make sure that we don't lose that. So it's really critically important. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, that concludes our presentations for the evening, but we clearly have more food and we have more time to network. We can continue having question and answers that anybody would like to engage in, or you can mingle amongst yourselves, enjoy some food, beverages, and we have another announcement.
Well, no, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. I'm Rebecca, Jordan's assistant. If you haven't met me yet, event coordinator. Thank you all for coming. This was awesome, even though it's a little hot and buggy, but I think these more intimate conversations are really sparking ideas. There are styrofoam to-go containers. Please help yourself to bring food home. The lavender farm is open for us if you want to go out into the farm. Our next event is next Wednesday at the Sloan Museum in Flint. If you haven't heard or seen anything about that, let me know and I will make sure you get some registration info on that. Thanks.
The door here is also open until 7:30 if you want to check it out inside. The door's down there.
You have 25 minutes to purchase items.
Thank you, everyone.